Welcome to True Vine Talks with Rachel and Linda.
Welcome back. Great
Yeah.
topic today on attachment re-injuries in relationships.
hmm
What is an attachment re-injury, Linda? How would you explain that to folks?
Great question, Rachel. So, an attachment re injury is when you have an experience of a distressful event in your childhood with a primary caregiver, and then you're in an adult partnership, and the the person you're with says or does something that reminds you of how you felt as a child, the exile part of yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So an example of that might look like if I'm in a relationship and my partner pulls away and becomes distant. I
Mm-hmm.
feel activated because that is reminding me of my like emotionally unavailable caregiver or a caregiver that would disappear and be like abandoned me. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Spot on. Spot on. And I'm an anxious, chaotic attachment style for my upbringing. So when, Charlie is distant or not available and goes quiet, my automatic response is fight, flight. Um, so either I'm gonna go pick a fight with him and try to poke at him, or I'm going to run away. So
Yeah.
it's either or. So you have to recognize, hey, what's happening to those children in the basement, as Robert Schwartz describes it in that book, You Are the
Hmm.
One You've Been Waiting For, is, oh, my exile part of myself, my inner child, she feels so alone right now. So what can I do? So I'm
Right.
going to get comfortable sharing it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Robert Schwartz and that IFS, internal family systems, refers to those inner children as exiled parts because for most of us, for the majority of our life, we do exile them to the basement, metaphorically, in our mind because it's there's a lot of shame there. Maybe I'm not worthy, maybe I'm not
Mhm.
lovable, maybe I'll always be alone. And that's really hard stuff to sit with emotionally.
Mhm.
And so that's why we tend to exile them, lock them away in the basement, those feelings,
Mhm.
right? Those beliefs about ourselves because we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to feel it. So our
Mm.
protector parts that we've talked about on other podcasts
Yes.
that don't want us to feel that shame, all those yucky negative emotions,
Right.
do whatever they can to help us function without having to feel all that yuck.
Mhm. And to function, one part that I was re-listening to his awesome book is we find surrogates, and a surrogate is another um, a replacement for an attachment figure. It could be an addiction to something, it could be overworking, it could be any number of things like eating to soothe the attachment need. So the protectors can be self-sabotagers to your
Right.
whole internal value system. How
Hmm.
does that sound? Does that sound correct?
Oh, I see it all the time. My clients and
Mm-hmm.
I talk about that, when they realize that, like, because a skill that maybe helped when you were little
Mm-hmm.
is now just sabotaging you. It's no longer helpful, but
Right.
it's this ingrained habit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And any bad habit that you developed as a child to cope with negative external experiences from attachment figures, that's a hard one to shake because that's your go-to function, your
Yeah.
default when people suck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
So an example of that would be this. I'm just thinking of like as far as attachment style goes, I'd say this would tend to be the avoidant attachment style, right? It's like people always hurt me, they always disappoint me, I can't rely on anyone. So I'm just going to be totally independent. I don't need anyone. I'll keep everyone at an arm's length, and then I won't get hurt. That is
yeah.
actually self-sabotage in the long run because deep down, if you long for connection,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of meaningful connection, romantic relationship, love. Like, I just want to feel accepted for who I am. You are never going to experience that if you keep everyone at arm's length.
Exactly.
So that's how it's self-sabotage. What I'm doing to protect
Mm-hmm.
myself is actually preventing me from getting what I want.
Mm-hmm. Well said, Rachel. So that tendency to move inward and hide only keeps people at bay, and you really could use a little more of those attachments inside, someone to be there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's well said. The anxious attachment or chaotic attachment, my go-to, is to push and then pull back in to want people to come close. But I get even just a hint of they're going to hurt me in some capacity, I'm going to push them away.
Hmm.
That's that chaotic style, it's the fearful, avoidant, anxious pursuer, the combined. It's tough if you have that. It's because you really long for bonds. So,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we all do as
Yeah,
humans long for a safe, nurturing bond in our life.
yeah. And if your partner in your adult life is, you know, we've probably used this as an example. We've probably said these, Rachel, and examples is, if they make a certain look at you, right? And that reminds you of how your abuser looked at you. You may be reactive in your nervous system because the body keeps score, right? So you
Right.
may respond to this person and blow up at them, and they didn't do anything. They simply looked at you a certain way. And that's hard for people to be like, oh, what did I do wrong? Your partner. And you're like, oh, I don't even subconsciously, you were reacting. Um,
Yes. Important to point that out. Yeah. So when we're talking about attachment re-injuries, these are injuries from the past, from growing up,
mm-hmm.
usually in childhood. Um, and now it's like something is happening in the present day that looks
Yes.
like, feels like, sounds like that experience.
Yes. Well
And that
said.
and that
Yes.
experience in childhood may not have been this one major traumatic event. It could have been
Right.
something that happened all the time, just over and over and over again. Like if you had an
Mm-hmm.
extremely judgmental and critical caregiver that was always picking you apart, present
Mm-hmm.
day, if you are perceive someone is criticizing you, that's going to open up that wound. And that's going to be an example of a re-injury.
Well
That could be a
said.
boss, it could be a friend, a partner.
Mm-hmm. 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 Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. An example, would be like being ignored. So I'll tell a
Yeah.
funny story. My
Yeah.
sister don't want me to tell this story. Hopefully, she don't listen to this podcast.
Oh
She
no.
she would go quiet. She did. We were little girls, and I'd do something, poke at her, like sisters do. You have a sister, and
Hmm. Hmm.
I'd poke at her, and she would get so frustrated with me that she would just, her face would go stone cold, and she would ignore me for hours. and I primary panicked. I was like, "What are you doing? Why are you ignoring me?"
Mm.
And I'd go into primary panic and I'd get really angry at her, throw stuff at her and stuff.
Yeah, just trying to get a response, right? Do you still care about me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually she'd come out of her planned ignore. That's what I call it, planned ignoring. And then she would feel bad and she would be my friend again when we're
Yeah.
little.
Yes, and that's so typical of sisterhood, right?
We do that to
Get
each other as
upset
kids.
with one another and then best friends shortly
Hmm.
after. Yeah. My
But we
sister and I are the
always
same
could,
way.
right, repair. You and your sister the same way. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm. And then you just start dancing together again. And
I was
then,
gonna say the same thing, Linda. That's so funny. We would literally be upset because someone borrowed a shirt borrowed without asking, right? In quotations, stole, took without permission, and then we're making up a dance or a secret handshake together, like then, within 20 minutes. It's like, what in the world? Yeah.
yes, yes. My sister and I would do this thing called two heads. And two heads was I would flip over on her back and you could see my head in between her legs and her head up here. So we did two heads.
That's so funny.
We haven't tried it in our 40s. Come on now.
I love it.
So that's what attachment is. It's a dance, even with siblings and primary caregivers, and you'll find that if you repair like we would as siblings, then you can have that attachment injury just sort of dissolve with time, and oh well, we're poking at each other, but we'll get back to it. I
Hmm.
think what happens in the intimate relationship is a little different. I think you hold that person to a standard, an expectation that they're going to heal all your inner child wounds. Do you think people do that,
Mm,
Rachel?
I
Like they
I do, which
yeah.
really we're sitting here talking about it is unfair, right? Wonder why we hold our partner to a higher standard than our
Mhm.
friends, family. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And that's why Robert Schwartz says you are the one you've been waiting for. Your
Hmm.
God-given self, your pure love for self from a higher power is going to show up for you in the ways that other people will never be able to.
Yeah.
They can't do it.
Well,
So,
because they don't know. They can't possibly know every thought, every feeling, the depth of those feelings. That is your own inner experience. That is your inner world. And it can be so difficult to explain it to other people in a way that makes sense and is like completely understandable.
mhm, right. You're right, Rachel. For someone to completely understand you is asking way too much. um, they're not going to know, like God knows every event in your life, every little thing that's happened to you. That's why in a lot of the readings, Rachel and I do emotionally focused therapy, attachment therapy, is no one kid has the same set of parents. That your experience with your mom and dad is different from your sister's experience with your mom and dad.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah. Because it's all our reality is our perception.
Perception. Good.
Yeah. Like the way I perceived my parents growing up was very different from how my sister did. And we'll talk
Exactly.
about it now as adults. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, that's what I thought this. You thought, like, it's interesting to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be like, well, you know, I don't remember them being harsh with me. I'm like, that's because they weren't harsh with you. You know, it's true.
Yeah.
They liked you better. Sorry,
Mhm.
you know, not sorry, right? So it's good to kind of like allow for people to have their own um, experiences, Rachel, for them to be able to share that. And that's where the healing comes in. And my phone is at 10% and my electric's out, so I'm at the office. So you know that we'll we'll have a little bit of time left on here for the Zoom
Okay.
call. Just letting you know.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
you're welcome. If I go out, disappear. So that part of yourself, how what would we want to tell our listeners about how to manage the reattachment injuries in their adult bonds?
Yeah, I think that we are always going back to self-awareness. That is key. That is the first step. You've got to become self-aware of what your triggers are. You
Mhm.
know, if someone pulls away and is distant, right, that activates my attachment, right? Or if someone criticizes me, or if someone seems angry or upset with me and they're poking, like you gotta figure out what it is,
Mhm.
right? And what your automatic response to that is, so that
Mhm.
you can then catch yourself doing that behavior, like
Mhm.
getting angry or pulling away, and you can begin to do the work to, like as we say in emotionally focused therapy, do a different dance.
Yeah.
Learn
Yeah.
new steps to a different dance.
Yes, Rachel, learn a new step. And what I tell couples too is like, name that to tame that, which is what
Mm,
Rachel taught me from Dan Siegel is look at your partner in the eyeballs and say, hey, when you sent that text and said, don't bother, did you mean I was bothering you or you were just, don't worry about it? So there's text communication can get really lost in translation.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gain clarity. Be
Mm-hmm.
curious. Curiosity leads to connection. Always saying that. Yeah.
Um, So rather than keep re-injuring your partner or you feeling injured, go ahead and make it explicit. And they're like, well, they should know that. I used to think that too in my 20s. Well, Charlie should know.
They don't
Well,
know that.
they don't know.
They don't
They
have a
don't
clue.
know when you leave dirty shoes in the sink that it gets on your nerves. Why are we washing our shoes in the sink? It's like, come on, man. Let's go outside and wash them sneakers. They got some dirty germs on them. Shoot.
Ah,
What?
and you don't know everything that upsets the people in your life. None of us can read people's minds. Just
No.
cannot.
Mm-mm. That's like the example, Rachel, when I went to with Dolly Sods with my sister and my aunt. We went hiking for lots of miles. We went to this restaurant and there was a lot of noise. I may have mentioned this in another podcast. There was a lot of background noise, and I was right at the door, and they kept coming in and out. And I had like some primary panic show up. So rather than having them guess why I'm getting up and leaving, thinking I'm mad or something, I said, I'm having anxiety. I need to step out. Bingo. I made
And
it
everyone's like, "Oh,
explicit.
okay.
Cool. Take
Yeah."
care of you. So
Hmm.
expecting people to know that you're having a panic attack when you're not, nothing is telling them, nothing is indicating that you're having a panic attack because people don't always know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just need to sigh, like I know that that makes my husband anxious, so I am now in the habit of when I do that saying nothing is wrong, I'm not mad at anyone or anything. I just needed to get that out. Like it just kind of like a deep breath with an exhale. And it just resets my nervous system. Yeah,
Love it. Deep sigh is soothing your sympathetic nervous system. Is that right? Or
sounds right.
parasympathetic?
I'm
I
not
get
sure.
I get them mixed up, guys. I
I
might have
do
a bad,
too.
but I get them mixed up. So we want folks to recognize that the first step in therapy is, you know, identify what your inner children in the basement, the exile parts, and what their unmet needs are first, right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Even journal about it. That's even better. Dear inner child, what do you need from your partner? What do you need to do for yourself that your partner can't do? You like
Yes,
you like that?
I think that's incredibly important. I think everyone needs to have a toolbox of things that they can do to nurture themselves and their own inner child that doesn't involve their partner.
Yes.
Yeah. For
Mm-hmm.
moments when your partner's not able to be there, because they're not going to always be able to be there, and they're not going to always have the capacity, even if they have the time.
Yeah, because you don't know what happened to them that day.
Right. And that's normal. That's okay
Mm-hmm.
that someone cannot be there for you 100% 24/7. That's just not possible. Even if they're
You
the greatest, kindest, most wonderful human being in the world, it is just not going to be possible
we
24/7, 100%.
thank you for saying that, Rachel. Mm-hmm. We are not Jesus. We are not God. We cannot be everything to people. Even as counselors, we're here for you for that hour. We're praying for you, thinking of you, sending good vibes, and then we have to decompress too. So folks need to know that humanity, your human parts need breaks. So,
Yeah,
hmm yeah. So that'd be the
I
first part, wouldn't you say, in recognizing what are those, you want to be self-led. So you want your exile parts of self, check in with them and see what their needs are if they're feeling injured, by their partner. And if they're feeling like they got re injured, we want them to name it, to tame it, make it explicit. Hey, when you did this, I felt this. Is that right?
right. When you pulled away, I felt rejected and abandoned, and that reminded me of my childhood. And I know that
Hmm.
wasn't your intention, and I'm sharing it with you now.
My
Yeah,
unmet need is a hug right now
yeah. Because that will help me
after
feel
that part.
connected to you. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. And working with those parts with your therapist, I highly recommend, like Rachel has told us, to reparent the kids in the back seat. Like, how are you going to do that? You know, how are you
yeah,
going to reparent?
yeah. I think it's important to acknowledge the goal is to learn how to manage
Mm.
those re-injuries and repair after they happened. The goal is never to make sure that those injuries never, ever, ever happen. That's impossible.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for making that explicit, Rachel. Often people think, well, we just keep doing this dance over and over again. Yeah, yeah, you do. And
And
yeah,
you will,
something, and you will.
to an extent, you
The
know.
one that torments you is the one that will heal you.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Let's not.
What he says in the book, I'm like, well, I guess what he means is the one that can hurt you is the one that can heal you. Yeah.
Oh, that's what Richard Schwartz says that in the book. I forgot about that, about the exiled parts.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because
That
then
that
it
makes
brings
sense in
it.
that context. I didn't have the context. I was lost. Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
my
you.
fault. My
No,
fault.
that's I
So
think it's a good example of intention and context are important sometimes in communication.
yeah, and that's what Rachel and I are doing. It's just
Yeah.
open communication. So he's saying when your partner re-injures that part of you that didn't get correct primary care giving, that it brings it into your awareness. And so then you can make that explicit to
Mm,
your partner, so the one that hurts you can also repair those parts. Now, again, it's not your partner's full responsibility to heal your inner child parts. It's just they bring that into awareness, is what I think he's. Does that sound right?
Yes, yes. I would describe it as it's your individual responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to learn new ways of behaving and communicating within your relationship that will allow for your partner to
Mm-hmm.
show up in that nurturing, caregiving way that you long for.
Mm-hmm.
And that positive interaction between the two of you is what heals
Mm-hmm.
a hurt inner child or an exiled part, because that's what's new. That would be like the leading
Yes.
edge. That's that experience that you didn't have in childhood, that you need now, that tells your brain, I can trust people to be there for me.
Well said.
Not
Mm,
everyone's going to reject and abandon me. I can be safe in a close relationship. That's builds that secure attachment, learning that it is safe to trust and connect.
very well said. Yeah. I love that. So that's the part where he's talking about the one that hurts you can also repair those parts of self. You
Yeah, I
know,
think so.
it's good. It's really good work. So, what do we want to leave our listeners with as I have 10% battery left?
Right. I've been thinking about that. Yeah. I guess just be aware of how and when you feel hurt in relationships
Mm-hmm.
and try to dig a little deeper to understand what that might be stemming from. Find the root and you can work on healing.
Yep, that's right. Make what's not known known to your partner. Yeah. And don't assume people know. They don't know what they don't know what you're feeling. People don't even know when you're hungry half the time.
Right.
How would
They
they
have no
know?
clue. Unless they hear your stomach growling, right? Like, that's your body communicating.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, great job today, Rachel. This was a good podcast. I'm excited.
Yeah. Thanks for the topic, Linda. All right. Until next time, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.